Okay, we're on the air. Welcome everyone. Welcome to our live broadcast, Monk Radio. We're back. And together with me here today is Robin Esposito, my co-conspirator. Okay, well, it's probably not for me. I'm broadcasting live, so yeah. Of course, I get a knock at the door right when we've started. Anyway, we're online. So we have questions from many moons ago waiting to be answered. But we also have a function here on the air where you can ask questions live. So if you're tuning in live, you can go to youtube.com/Yutadhammo, I believe. And I think you can ask questions live. You just click on the button there, and it will let you ask us questions. So we'll be doing both. Robin, you want to start us off? So far we have 0 viewers, so I'm assuming we're going to have to kick this off ourselves with some canned questions.
I know we have some viewers. I have at least one person who has contacted me every single Saturday since you went to Asia to see if we were going to have Monk Radio. I know he's watching. It's Michelangelo. But yes, definitely we have questions in the queue, lots of them. And the top-rated one is, can you explain the inner workings of meditation? Like what's going on behind the scenes when we are noting our experiences and repeating mantras or resting our minds within an experience, etc. Bless you.
What's the question? The mechanics of meditation, how it's working behind the scenes?
Yes, can you explain the inner workings of meditation? I'll post it in the Q&A too.
I should be recording this, right? I'm recording on another station. So, and just for my benefit as well, can you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. Can you explain the inner workings of meditation? Like what's going on behind the scenes?
Wait, just a second. It's not. Why isn't it? Okay, again.
Can you explain the inner workings of meditation? Like what's going on behind the scenes when we are noting our experiences and repeating mantras or resting our minds within an experience?
Well, we can answer from a point of view of the theory of the Abhidhamma, but I don't think we have to go quite so far. It's quite simply put, there's a moment in the mind where you decide about an object. So whether it's seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, or thinking, these are the 6 doors. So there's the process of experiencing that first there's the object, then the mind wakes up to the fact that there's an object. This all happens very quickly, but it wakes up and it approaches the object, and then it experiences the object. And then it decides about the object. Well, there's another part of recognizing it, associating it with past experiences. But then there's that moment of decision where the mind makes a decision about the object. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it me? Is it mine? All of these things. And maybe not just one moment, but there is, there is said to be that one moment per experience. And it can have all sorts of factors in it. But an ordinary state will usually have likes and dislikes. And we'll have identification as me and mine and so on. So quite simply put, the noting is a replacement for that. It's a decision that this is this, right? Our ordinary reaction is this is good, this is bad, this is me, this is mine. Um, Never just this is this. So that reminding, is really the best word possible to describe what we do, and I'm using it more and more these days. Not instead of mindfulness or so on. The noting, acknowledging, all those words don't really encapsulate what we're doing. What we're doing is reminding ourselves. Reminding. So you bring the mind back to that original experience. This is this, which can be described by the words objective. That is objective. It's objectivity. It's the definition of objectivity. Or maybe not the definition, but it's exactly objective, and it's also the truth. It's the definition of observation. You see, when you do a science experiment, way back in high school, when I did those kind of things, have all the observations. That's the key to a good experiment, is accurate observations. So this is an accurate observation. It was really confusing to me when I first learned about Buddhism. When you walk, just walk. When you sit, just sit. So I was reading these sort of vague concepts, not exactly the way we do it, but it was this general concept of when you walk, just walk. That's not quite how I explain it now, but it's along the same ideas. And I was getting these ideas of, what the heck does that mean? What good is it? What does it accomplish, and so on. It's the key to understanding. So the next thing that occurs in that case, is you start to see the experience as it is, instead of with a deluded mind. You see, you start to realize that our ordinary reactions, our ordinary understanding of our experiences are fraught with delusions and sort of a vagueness, or a lack of clarity that allows for all sorts of a breeding ground of all sorts of defilements. My teacher would always describe it as darkness. So he would often refer to mindfulness as a light that you shine in. In dark, and it's a good analogy, because in darkness all sorts of bad things grow, right? In darkness, fungus grows, bacteria grows, and if there were no sun, or no sun, in places where there are no sun, like in dark caves and so on, that's where all of the sort of gross stuff grows. But as soon as the sun comes out, you shine sunlight, this can't grow, it can't fester. And so that's a non-technical, or sort of partially quasi-technical explanation of what happens. I don't know if you want me to, if it's necessary to go any more technical than that. There's not much further you can go. There is some sense that you can have you can have a system of sort of describing the building blocks. So in one sense, this question is asking for an atomic framework, or subatomic, depending, as you would. And so the Abhidhamma tries to provide that. It's quite interesting to find this atomic framework for the mind. And so you can actually study that and see exactly what's going on with the difference. But I think it's quite clear, it's quite simple. And as a result, it's quite easy to dispel a lot of these doubts that I used to have, and a lot of people I met used to have, about this type of practice. What good is it? What the heck does that do? This mantra of mindless brainwashing, what is that? When in fact it's quite simple and quite clear and quite obviously useful. I mean, maybe not obviously useful, but with a little bit of, being honest with yourself. Another way of describing it is it's a changing of our habits. So over time, this changes the way we look at things in general. So our habit normally is reacting, responding, and you know, inexact, cutting corners in a sense, rather than really examining. We fall into a habit based on what works. So it's worked for us so far, and it's fine. We're able to get along, and that's how the mind works. It's fine with imprecision and imperfection, because it works. It fixed the problem to some extent, and so we get used to this habit of dealing with things in a way that works. Meditation is, this process of seeing things will show you the imperfections in our approach to experience. Sometimes they're quite glaring, and we realize, how did I miss that? We realize that we're really doing things wrong. For the most part, a beginner meditator will see some fairly glaring errors of analysis or processing of experience, and so those will change. You'll naturally change your habits, and you'll start to react differently or respond differently. And so your habits will change. You start to have the habit of seeing things as they are, not reacting, being objective, being impartial, being equanimous, being clear, being balanced, being pure. I mean, there's so much incredible benefits to the practice. There's no question how wonderful it is. So that's what's happening, I think. I mean, I think that's an explanation, adequate explanation of what's happening. Thanks. Good question.
The part about resting our minds, do you feel like we are resting our minds?
Oops, I didn't see that. Sure, yes, definitely resting your mind, because you're freeing it from all that stressful reactivity. It's definitely a rest. I don't suppose that can be described as the purpose, but it's a nice byproduct. I mean, it's a part of the point, I suppose, in the sense that you're doing things right for a change. You're not for a change, you're doing things much better, much more efficiently. How do I join the group? Short answer, you don't. I invited one person to this group, and that was that person down there. She's with me. So no, I'm not inviting anybody else to the hangout. I don't see the point, really. Or should I? Should we invite more people? Should we let people join? I guess we have to know. Let's say this: we have to know who they are. We have to have met them in person, and they have to come and they have to have meditated with us, me, in person. Let's start with that. So Stefano wants to join, and I'm gonna let him because I know he's. Okay. Do I even have him? Stefano, yes. Okay. I have invited Stefano. We have 15 viewers. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monk Radio. Welcome back. We are live. Okay, ready. Oh, wait, just a second.
Sorry.
Why isn't this recording? Okay, ready?
Yes.
Okay, go.
Should we ever explore things intentionally that arise naturally during the meditation, contrary to simply observing?
I think it can be at times useful. I think the times I can think of where it's useful is when you're just banging your head against the wall and it feels like you're not getting anywhere and the meditation is not progressing. I think it can be useful, you know, conventionally useful to spend some time, a little bit of time, sort of figuring out what you're doing wrong. This is called vimangsa, which is, well, it's, in one sense anyway, it refers to this sort of stepping back and taking a look at things. But I think that's the only point where I would recommend this. You know, explore things intentionally. You're kind of misleading with that terminology because we are exploring things, but the usage of that word is that the verbiage there is kind of sneaky. Not, and I'm not blaming, not criticizing exactly, but you have to be careful that you're not tricking yourself by using that words into you know backing up your sort of argument, because you're not talking about exploring. You're talking about uh, I mean, I don't know. Exploring could go either way. It's a fairly neutral word, but your implication is that you want to um, sort of uh, prod and delve, you know, which it sort of, from our point of view, implies leaving the middle way, because the middle way would be um, something a little bit less than what you're suggesting, but it still could be called exploration. So what we're doing is an exploration, intentional. It's just not um, you know, prodding in the sense of going beyond a simple awareness of things as they are. What we're doing, as I said in the last question, is observing. We're conducting a science experiment, and we're going to record our observations. And in this science experiment, as with a perfect science experiment, the conclusions will be obvious from the observations. You don't interpret the observations beyond what is obvious. So that's a perfect science experiment where you don't have to interpret, where anyone who looks at the data can come to the same conclusions. So that is what happens in meditation. The conclusions come naturally. So all that's important is the proper observation. I think this question comes up because people feel that it's not enough, not satisfied by simply observing, and so they're looking for something more. That is, I mean, that is caused by something completely different. That's caused by sort of ambition and impatience, frustration, boredom, all of these things, and a sort of preconception that meditation has to be more than simply observing. Lack of confidence or trust, and the inability to conceive of the fact that simply observing things is going to get you the results. Now, it's hard to believe that by doing something so silly as just reminding yourself, this is this, this is this, that that's actually going to do anything. You know, most people are like, well, I know everything about myself already. I mean, I've been, how many years I've been watching myself? What could I possibly learn? So there's this one teacher in Bangkok, some of you may have heard me say this, he says, they told a 95-year-old woman, I said, so you know yourself pretty well, right? He said, yeah. You know how well do you know your hand? And she said, my hand, quite well. I've used my hand all my life. And he said, how many knuckles do you have in one hand? Don't count. Tell me, how many knuckles do you have? Couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. No idea. I don't even remember. It's 14, 15, something like that. just kind of as a funny joke, but our minds are very much like that. Of course we've been spending so much time with our minds, but we're not really investigating. And it actually is something quite simple, and the answers are quite obvious. It's amazing that we never look. It's really incredible that we spend all this time and didn't really see any of this. We were never looking, never trying to understand. Or maybe we gave up too soon. We didn't have the tools to understand. I suppose there always was a time where we wanted to understand. We just never really had the tools or clarity necessary to think of it as a science experiment where you need objective observation. You can't just think, question, what is the answer? You skip the most important part, and that's observing. But here, that's exactly what's being asked here. Should you do more than observe? No, science doesn't work that way. And there's a reason why it doesn't. Anything else that you do, is manipulating the experiment. And that's why you use double blinds and everything, is to avoid all that. Anyway, so I hope that helps. Robin, you're echoing me. Why is that happening? Am I echoing you?
I'm not sure. I have my speaker here. Do you think?
Maybe it's too loud, or maybe it's too close to your mic. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just
Are you getting echoes of yourself through me?
No, to me it sounds fine.
Hmm.
How's that, Brenna? Is it still echoing?
No. Oh wait, it's only when I talk. So, yeah, no, much better. I guess you can't be too close to the mic or something. Hey, Stefano. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, Brenna's mentioning the echoing. I was really getting that. Okay, so we're done with that one. Ready?
Ready?
Okay, go.
How do you deal with self-hate? I try to observe the hate, but it is so strong. Do I need to practice metta? And how do I do that if I hate myself? Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that it actually, yeah, it certainly can't hurt to express love for yourself, but it's problematic. Sending love to yourself is like trying to shoot yourself. No, that works actually. You can shoot yourself, but it's like trying to see your own eyes, because you're doing the sending. And people talk about it. It's certainly recommended by many teachers to wish for you. And everyone recommends it, but the texts say it's just an example and doesn't really do that much. But sure, it's certainly something worth doing. I mean, the reason I hesitate about saying yes is that there's a potential for it to become sort of um, egotistical, right? The whole idea of the self, it's already a problem. Self-hatred is very much tied to ego. It's different from hatred of others in the sense that it's egotistical. You are we have expectations for ourselves, and we feel guilty and we feel bad when we feel ashamed of ourselves. Shame, this sense of improper shame. There's proper shame, which recognizes when you do bad things. But there's this improper sense of this sort of obsession with self-hatred. I mean, regardless whether you should send or shouldn't send metta, it's not really the most important solution to the problem. Obviously, insight meditation is the greatest solution to the problem. So part of it is actually correct. I mean, it's a correct observation when you do something bad to say that was a bad thing. When you give rise to unwholesome mind states, it's good to say, that was an unwholesome mind state. Of course, it's a bigger problem when you say, I'm ugly, or I'm fat, or I'm stupid. Even I'm stupid, because intelligence is, because none of these things, including intelligence, are essential. Being fat isn't evil. Being ugly isn't evil. Being bald isn't evil. So that kind of self-hatred is worse. That's damaging. That's the kind of thing that you really have to put aside. But knowing when you've done something wrong is important, because there are other people on the other side who don't see when they do something wrong and have self-righteousness when anyone tries to criticize them. So an honest person, it's actually a sign of desire to develop, to know that you have problems. The Buddha said, if a fool knows that they're a fool, to that extent you can call them wise. Right? But a fool who thinks they're wise, that's the real fool. So there's definitely a benefit there to seeing your negative qualities. Certainly never see that, and that's why I hesitate, because it's not always the case that you should get rid of every aspect of this and think all these teachings where you should think I am special and I am wonderful and I am perfect just the way I am. Well, but it's rubbish. It's certainly not Buddhist. Buddhism, you're useless. I just told my meditator that. We had a long conversation, and at one point I said, a lot of this is just coming to the realization that you're useless. Or I didn't say it. There was some context, and I said, eventually you just realize that you're useless and hopeless. Because that's really it. We're actually going that far to give up this body and this mind. We're using, my teacher said, the mind discards the mind. Mind throws out the mind. So don't discard that part of the teaching. Don't just think, well, it's wrong if I criticize myself. That's not wrong. Again, wrong is the reaction to that. How do you react? And it's really just a cop-out to feel guilty, to hate yourself. It's just the easy way out. It's like the easy way out with anything. When a baby cries, the easy way out is to shake the baby, to yell at, to throw the baby out the window. I mean, that's a horrible thing to say, but these thoughts arise in the parent. They get so frustrated. They start, going crazy as a result. I don't suppose parents ever get to the point where they want to strangle their kids, but they shake them. Parents want to shake their kids sometimes. Maybe not babies, but kids. Hit their kids, of course. Why am I getting these loud noises? Don't send me messages, please. Stefano, if you want to send a message, send it. Anyway, sorry. We're live here. There's a chat box you can use. Right, so we take the easy way out. You hit You fight, you yell, you scream. And that's all we're doing when we feel guilty, when we feel self-hatred and so on. We're copping out. Again, it comes back to this: how do you react to the situation? You realize that was wrong, and what is the reaction? Are you going to get angry or frustrated? These are useless. So the point is actually that hatred is wrong. The fact that it's directed to yourself is not an issue. You know, the the issue is that you react angrily towards that, which again, it just comes back down to any anger, any sort of anger. Of course, sending love helps. Doing good deeds can help because it can help with the guilt, right? This is what the Buddha said. Morality. He said specifically morality. Morality makes you feel less guilty, so try not to do bad things. But doing good things makes you feel good about yourself as well. You know, if you do lots of good deeds, you'll feel better about yourself. You feel like, yeah, I'm a good person. So that is another point, especially morality. You know, stop doing things that make you hate yourself to some extent. But I think a lot more of it is just about hating things that you can't easily change, and so you have to stop with the anger, and you have to accept not that aspect of yourself, but you have to accept that that's the reality of it. You have to accept it as reality, because if you can't accept it, you're going to react negatively towards it. All of our bad qualities, they are bad, no question. I mean, there is some question, but quite often they're really bad qualities. But reacting to them doesn't solve them. The answer is not in getting angry. Anyway, so hope that helps. I don't like questions about myself. Those always kind of turn me off. What do you think, Robin? You're still echoing, by the way.
I'm still echoing?
I mean,
Okay.
I'm echoing through you, but
Okay.
can you turn down the speakers? Do you need them? How loud are they?
Well, I won't be able to hear what you're saying at all. Give me
Yeah.
a moment. I'll just put on the headset.
No, I can't hear you, Stefano. I would say it's probably a hardware problem. Are you sure your mic is plugged in? Okay. Then check Windows. Windows has this funny little. If you're using Linux, it's very easy. There's some really cool utilities you can use, but Windows has this weird sort of control panel for your audio. Right? You go in the bottom right corner and make sure you've got it set as the default. You've got you set the right default device for communications as well. Like there's the two different settings or something. Windows is for children. It's such a silly operating system. Sorry. And what else? Then check here in Google. Does Google have a click in your settings, the little gear icon up at the top, and then choose the mic source. No, I don't hear anything. Nope. Potentially a hardware problem. You try a different mic. Or, you could check and see if it's working in other software. Can you record through that mic? That kind of thing. Anyway, it's okay. You're not, just seeing you is good. Good to see you. You know what is your mission in your life as a monk? How do you see yourself in 10 years? That's not, I'm sorry. Asking me about the future is not a good question. I could speculate. I'm sure I'd have an interesting answer, but out of principle, I'm going to decline to answer that. I'm sorry. Hey, Robin.
Hi, Bunty. Can you hear me?
Oh, now you're really loud.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was good. I'll just turn my volume down. I think you were just quiet before. How would that be?
I don't know. Has the echoing stopped, though? It's probably from the open
Definitely.
mic.
Yes, the echoing is completely gone.
Okay, perfect.
You need maybe it's a condenser. You see this mic I have is a mic condenser mic, so it's all here and close. It gets very little input from the speakers over there.
Okay. Yeah, I had an open speaker on, so now I'm just hearing through the headphones, so I'll leave it as this.
Right. Because I think if it's too loud, it's hard for Google to cancel the echo. All right. 27 viewers. Hello, everyone. Welcome
Wow.
back.
That's pretty nice with short notice.
Yeah. Okay, are we ready for the next question?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Is it possible to be mindful of an experience without applying a mantra? In other words, to be mindful of one seeing without saying, seeing, seeing?
This points out the problem with the word mindful. It's a very bad translation of the word sati. Because of course you assume if that's all it is, then why do you need to use the mantra? But sati means to remember or to remind yourself. In this case, I like remind yourself, although it's possibly not a literal translation either. So remember is better. But what are you trying to remember? You're trying to remember the essential quality of the experience, the objective reality. You're trying to avoid any kind of um, extrapolation of the object. And to do that, you require something called tirasanya. This is the proximate cause of sati. Tirasanya means the recognition of something. Sanya means recognition. Tira means firm or strong. So you need to uh, augment your sanya. Sanya arises anyway. Tirasanya means you augment it. You reaffirm it. So the augmenting has to come about. So the question then is, what are you doing to bring that about, if not reminding yourself? Now, as I mentioned in the first question, as I explained in the first question, exactly what you're doing. You're bringing it back to just this is it. So you're keeping it there. So it goes along, and there comes a point where the mind can interject and say, this is good, this is bad, this is me, this is mine. Instead, you hold it there. The function of mindfulness is to hold the object, to keep it from, or to hold the mind and keep it on the object, to keep the mind from um, moving away from the object. Uh, so that's what this noting is. So the challenge that I give to anyone who asks this question is, can you explain a better way to do what we quite clearly and effectively accomplish? The point is that people don't want to do this strange thing of using a mantra. It's really kind of it's not a very good question. I mean, everyone asks this. I get this question on and again and again and again, but it's not a very good question. And I think it comes about because of our preconceptions and because of how we've come to this through sort of this tradition. I mean, a tradition is sort of this intellectual understanding of meditation as being some kind of sort of vague, sort of nothing, of just sitting there and I don't know, watching the breath, I think is a big one, but not really doing anything. When in fact, before we came to Buddhism, most people's understanding of meditation was a mantra. What is the word mantra? Where does it come from? Where have we heard this? It's a Hindu thing. When we knew of meditation as a Hindu thing, we thought, well, meditation is where you do Om. You have a mantra, and what good is the mantra? It focuses the mind. It has a real, definite purpose and benefit to it. That's what this is all about. It's nothing new or special. It's that. It's meditation the old way. It's old school. This new idea of just sitting there and zoning out, it's a very hippie thing. When you go to these folk festivals and they think, yeah, you just become one with the universe. It's not very technical. It's very professional. Professional meditation. What we're doing is professional. That's what it is. Professional meditation, where you are really taking this seriously, and you're not taking this as some kind of feel-good thing. This is something you're going to do systematically, methodically, and it's going to have real results, definite results. It's going to be scientific. To be scientific, you have to be sure. It's like, why do you need a double blind in a science experiment? Because of the potential for bias. It's very clear. It's exactly that. You could say, oh, I'm just going to sit and observe things. Well, okay, potentially you can become enlightened. Absolutely. Is it possible? Yes, possible. Likely? Not likely. Why? Because the potential for bias, if you just let it go, and it's like conducting an experiment, saying, well, let's just have people come in and tell us, what happened. Tell us their experiences. How can you do that without introducing bias? Even when you have just an experimenter, they say it's not enough. You need to have someone observing the experimenter. The person doing the experiment has to be watching the person actually administering the drugs and etc. Double blind.
Can I ask something related to this?
Sure.
Now, you want to do this during your daily tasks as well, right? You're just sort of always noting what you're doing. But if you're doing something very detail-oriented that has many, many steps, when I've tried to do this with very detail-oriented work, it's kind of frantic, in your mind to try to keep up with every little piece of a detail-oriented task. Would you just kind of consolidate things so that you're not in your mind saying, flipping, turning, just really fast in your mind as you're doing something?
Well, it has a potential to change your. You can think of it as, we don't always get angry, or greedy. It's not all defiled. Our mind is not constantly defiled, but it slips into us sort of a stream of defilement. So it shifts. So you'll find you are generally angry. That's why you can be angry for a period of time, right? Because it's that period of anger. Likewise, you don't have to be mindful. You don't have to remind yourself every moment in order to be mindful, in order to have sati arise. All we're doing is nudging it in that direction. So there's an explanation of why it doesn't have to be every moment. The point being, you can do general acknowledgement, and that nudges you in the direction of wholesomeness. That's enough. So when I said what we're trying to do is to stop that moment of reactivity, it's that moment. It's way too fast for us to do every moment. But by nudging ourselves in that direction, by catching like in a pulse, it inclines you in that direction. This is why you'll be mindful and you'll still be getting angry, because you can't catch them all. But by nudging in that direction, the anger will subside, or the anger, the greed, the bad stuff will subside, and you'll be pulling yourself in that direction until all the minds are in that way. All you need is, or all you can do, as you say, is occasionally. But by occasionally we mean like once a second kind of thing. So Mahasi Sayadaw actually puts a definite value there. He says once a second is a good acknowledgement.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, finally.
Okay, don't just jump in there. I was recording that, so don't. You're making us unprofessional. If you want to be in this hangout, you have to be careful. Mm,
Okay, I thought you
not
were finished.
not really. Well, I think I caught it in time. Anyway, yes, we can hear you. Yay, good to have you. But remember, I'm recording here, so we have to, when I'm recording, until I turn off the recording, it's not really important. Just being me.
Okay, I understand.
It's hard to remember. You kind of get relaxed and think you're actually just, hanging out talking.
Which we are, Honestly, I'm just being mean. So we are just relaxed talking. If you want to join the hangout, you have to come and meditate with me first. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to kick off the tour. So I think March 1st is a good a day as any to say, hey, I'm doing another East Coast tour. Or maybe we'll go up the West Coast this time. But I'm going to Florida. It's already set. Florida, May 9th. Where I go from there is not yet set in stone. Wherever I'm invited, within reason.
So you'll start from Florida? Or?
That's the plan. Why? Because it's hot in the summer in Florida. So if I start there early, then I move north as it gets warm.
Plus, there's probably still snow in Canada in May.
No.
No, yeah.
A little bit, but not.
Maybe this winter there might be.
Well, some parts of Canada, yes. I think so.
Okay, and on 35 viewers. Wow, welcome everyone. It's great. Ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Doing meditation right before sleep? Yes, yes. No, no. I've heard that mind learns to associate meditation with sleep, and so when doing it at daytime, one will have a hard time not to fall asleep because mind is conditioned. Your stance on it?
No, that's certainly not the way we look at it.
I think they're asking if you use meditation, if you do meditation right before you go to sleep, will you associate it with sleep and then become sleepy during the day?
Yeah, I understand that.
Is that
It's
it? Okay.
interesting. I mean, sure, possibly that could happen, but it would mean you're not being mindful, right? Anytime you make that kind of an association, there's more going on than it's not passive. You see, you would have to cultivate the mental inclination to fall asleep, right? What happens when you're mindful is the exact opposite. You start to associate lying down with clarity, because you're actually, in a sense, fighting, but more like retraining the mind. So normally when you lie down, it's like let your mind go, let it wander until you pass out, right? From just exhaustion, really. Uh, and instead of doing that, we're having a clarity of mind. In fact, people often complain that it's harder to fall asleep when you're mindful. You end up just lying there awake, which is cool because that means you didn't really need the sleep anyway. But it's a retraining. So normally when we lie down, we enjoy the pleasure of the softness of our beds, which is why we have people sleep on the floor. When I started meditating, back in my day, you all have it easy. Back in my day, when I was your age. No, but really, this is a good back in my day story. We really did, and we didn't have the worst of it. I've heard worse stories, concrete and so on. But we had nice parquet wooden floor, with the thinnest of mattresses, lumpy. The mattress was like, if you've ever seen these Thai monk mattresses, they're torture devices. They're lumps, and it's just two pieces of cloth with some fiber, cloth in it. And me being bony as all get out, it was really torture. I couldn't lie on my side that I normally do. It was just too painful. So I had to lie on my back, which I never do, which apparently is quite healthy though. I would lie on my back and I couldn't fall asleep. Yeah, maybe that wasn't such a good story. It's not really what I recommend, but there is a point to it that you end up sleeping just as much as you need. And it is a good point because I think back to this other story where I was in California and everything was kind of falling apart, and I had come back from Minnesota. I was teaching briefly in Minnesota. I came back, had no place to stay, and so someone was inviting me to stay in their house, but there was a woman in the house, so I wasn't comfortable with that. And we got to their house and got out of the car, and I just walked away. Anyway, let's cut to the chase. I ended up sleeping under a picnic table in North Hollywood, a very dangerous part of the city, under a picnic table on the concrete, and it was wonderful. I still think of that as one of the best nights of my life because I was totally free. I guess the context is important, up until that point I had been so trapped. It's like, where am I going to stay? Where am I going to set up? And everything was everywhere was a problem, going here, going there. Because you're always dependent on people, and you have to, bend to this and to that. And then I just walked out and decided to live that night on my terms. And so I went and slept under a picnic table. And it was so wonderful. It was freezing cold. Winters in California are not fun at night. Gets down to almost zero, I think. Almost freezing. For you guys it's not zero, but almost freezing. In the desert at night, no? And concrete. And so all I had were these nice thick robes. And so I kind of bunched them up in front of me and lay down. I did sitting for a while, and then eventually I just got too tired and I lay down almost face first in the concrete. And I slept. I slept for like 3 hours. And it was great. It was really, it was a wonderful, hi Mom. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. And that relates to your question just simply because you don't need that much sleep. If you need to sleep, you'll fall asleep. And that's a part of what we're aiming for. So being mindful will allow you to stay awake. There are monks. There was a monk once who said he could do 24 hours of lying meditation. This Burmese monk who claimed to be able to do 12 hours of standing, 12 hours of sitting, and 24 hours of lying meditation. He claimed to be able to be mindful for that long, which is pretty darn impressive. So the point being that you change your relationship to lying, to lying down. Lying down becomes a mindful exercise. becomes enlightening.
Bhante, for your online meditation group, you'll have to add another column. You have sitting meditation, walking meditation. You have to add the lying meditation.
I do that sometimes, but you can still consider that sitting meditation.
Well, when I do lying meditation, I consider it lying as in lying to myself that I'm meditating because I'm falling asleep.
No, but you can't. I mean, it's considered sitting because the same practice. You still do the rising, falling, lying, touching, rising, falling, lying, and so on. Instead of rising, falling, sitting, you do rising, falling, lying. So yeah, do it instead of the sitting meditation. I mean, it's quite useful if sitting meditation is, lying meditation is useful when you're distracted. So if in sitting your mind is still buzzing and you just can't focus, lie down and you'll find yourself able to focus. But it's dangerous. It's easy to fall asleep. The point being, and the answer to your question is that the key is to be clearly mindful. And when you're mindful, it will actually retrain you and wean you off of the need to be the need to sleep.
I have a question.
Is it something I should record?
Well, I'll ask you first, and then maybe we could ask it again. Should one wear a hat or gloves or even a jacket outside in the winter? Because you would have to have a desire to be warm. So you're creating aversion to the cold.
Yeah, that's not the only reason why you'd wear. That's an interesting question. Let's ask it. One I've never gotten before. Just let me. What are we doing here? Done with that one. North Hollywood isn't a dangerous part. I saw someone light a car on fire and it exploded right outside the temple. North Hollywood is dangerous, man. Burbank is the same area. I mean, where I'm talking about Coldwater Canyon and Roscoe. It's quite near Burbank. Sort of the same area. Sun Valley? Yeah. Bad part of town. Not the nice part. But the thing is, all the gangs are Asian. For the most part, it seems. Gangs in the area are Asian, and they kind of respect monks. So it's kind of, I get a free pass. But yeah, right. I watched a car explode. This nice fancy race car explode right outside the monastery.
Hopefully nobody was in it.
No, it was a gang thing. Someone parked it there, maybe stole it and parked it behind the mall. I don't know how it works. It's still clueless to this day what happened, but it had been there for a while, and finally someone decided to light it on fire. Yeah, I felt so safe in that area. The funny thing is, I felt so safe there, and I only felt really in danger when I moved to the rural area of California. And that's where I got arrested and thrown in jail. That's another story for another time. Yeah, I've had a crazy monastic life. Someday I'll have to write an autobiography. How not to live what not to do. There was I used to be a punk rocker before I became a monk. And so there's this one punk band, No Effects, and they had an album, 16 years of effing up. I've often thought of that as a good description of the monastic life, or the Buddhist practice.
First, it sounded like a clever name for a band you would have. No effects. No.
NOFX. I mean, there's something very, very honest about punk rock. I certainly don't. But they're very honest and unpretentious, and that's part of the philosophy of it. They're also, full of lots of unwholesomeness, but yeah, it's interesting because I was just talking about that today. Trial and error is a good way of describing what we do. It's all about trial and error. You make mistakes until you stop making them. You can't change things. You can just see what you're doing wrong and change automatically.
Unless it's improper. Unless what you're doing can be a hindrance.
Well, that's the thing is you see that it's a hindrance.
Oh, yeah.
Because you see you're doing things wrong. So it's 16 years of screwing up is a good way of describing a good 16 years of meditation practice. It's doing everything wrong until you figure it all out. Really the way we learn. On an unrelated topic, before we get into your question, is this camera clear?
No, it turned a bit blurry. I think it was clear before.
It's really strange. It's a new camera. Probably doesn't work well with Linux.
For my camera, it took me a while to figure out my focus. There's a ring on the cam that you turn.
Yeah, I don't have that. It's autofocus. Yeah, now it's autofocusing.
It's clear now.
Probably if I was using Windows, it would have a driver that lets me adjust the autofocus.
But are you using the Mac that's in that office?
The Mac?
Yeah, I remember Damo getting a Mac.
Yeah. Oh, right, in the other room. He moved it now. It's in the temple. No, I'm using Linux. And someone just got me a new. You see, it's widescreen. I think
Yeah.
much wider, which is kind of neat. Although in this setting, it's not necessary, but that's going to be quite useful at times to have this widescreen camera. It's the newest high-tech camera thing. Anyway, back to questions. Stefano.
Yeah.
Ready? Go.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, should one wear a jacket or hat or gloves during the winter? And because if one wears a hat or a jacket, they're creating aversion towards the cold.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly that potential, and I think certainly that that's a real thing that really happens. And so to some extent, we have to deal with that. When I was here 15 years ago in this same monastery, this was where I spent my first year as a monk, and I had to go to university every day. I was still even as a monk, I was in university. And it was darn cold. Even before that, after I started meditating, I came back to Canada and went back to university as a layperson in this same monastery. And I remember dealing with the cold. I had this funny situation where I was to meet this abbot, and we were going to Toronto together. And so we made an appointment to meet at a specific street corner at a specific time, 4 o'clock, I think it seems to me. It was 4 o'clock. And at 4 o'clock, I was there waiting. If this is the corner, I was here. And I waited, could see the intersection, and I waited for half an hour. Getting colder, it was freezing, and I was like quite getting quite sick as a result. But I had this interesting experience where just simply by being mindful, I could lose the sense of cold. By not acknowledging cold, the shivering would stop, and the pain and the upset, of course, would stop. But also the cold would just sort of disappear. enter into this sort of good state where the body was comfortable. Of course, it didn't last, and I ended up getting was quite frustrated. And then I was like, "This is crazy," and so I started walking back towards the monastery. And I walked to the intersection. I looked over, and he was around the corner, waiting in his car. And he was just as frustrated as me, or probably not as much, because he was sitting in his warm car. But he had been sitting in his warm car for the past half hour, so we both were there on time. And he scolded me, and I scolded him. And it taught us a lesson in looking around the corner. But definitely that's part of it, and that was something I realized over time, is that part of our aversion to cold is just that, an aversion. That's not the only reason why you wear a hat, I mean, and a coat and so on. There's a difference between being cold and making yourself sick. You can't get sick from the cold, but as I understand it, it reduces your immune system and can do that quite severely, to the point where you're quite likely to catch whatever virus is going around. It increases your odds of getting sick, which can be a hindrance to your practice, etc., etc. Of course, you won't be able to teach. You wouldn't be able to study, for example, when you're sick. So there's quite some detrimental effects to the cold. Yeah, I mean, here in Canada, you can't just go out in the cold. You'll get really sick.
So I was wondering, how do you decide when to wear a hat?
Well, you should wear a hat as a matter of course. I mean, wearing a hat doesn't, in and of itself, cultivate an aversion to cold. Aversion cultivates aversion. It's habitual. So if you don't change the habit, it will increase. Aversion will create further aversion. So by noting, upset, disliking, that's what gets rid of the aversion. Or when you feel cold, saying cold, cold. If you never feel cold because you're always wearing a hat, that's not going to create aversion to cold. It's only when you feel the cold and you allow yourself to dislike it, that's what's cultivating the aversion. Now, the disliking of it is what often leads you to put the hat on. But it's not the putting the hat on that's the problem. It's the encouraging of the disliking.
Okay. So should you determine to wear the hat before going outside? So otherwise, if you go outside and you realize it's cold, then you put on the hat. Then you're creating aversion to the cold. So
no, it's not because you put on the hat. It's because you dislike the cold. It's the actual disliking that becomes habitual.
Oh, okay.
So if you say to yourself, cold, cold, and there's no disliking, you say, well, here I am outside, let me put on the hat. It's nothing to do necessarily with aversion. So, good question, but the mechanics of it are otherwise. It's habit. It's about what forms a habit. So it's not it seems like that. It seems like by putting on the hat you become more averse to it. And I've often said sort of that sort of thing, but technically speaking, that's not what happens. So this is why when you feel pain, it's not a problem to adjust. The adjusting, the moving your body, shifting is not the problem. But what is pushing you to move, that's the problem. And so we encourage you not to move. We encourage you to instead try to learn about it. It doesn't mean that the actual moving is causing the aversion. So in certain cases, there'd be no reason. For example, when you feel pain, there's no reason to move. In most cases, you don't have to move. Here in this case, even though part of it is, even though there is the potential to put on the hat out of aversion, there's also the reason to put on the hat to not get sick. So also to not get distracted, because it can be very difficult to focus if you've got a headache from the cold, or cold we don't function very well at sub-zero temperatures, right? So, and then as soon as you go inside, you get a huge headache, and it's not a very good result, especially going from hot to cold. It's quite hard on the body, and that's not useful. It's not helpful to do that. So, I mean, these are excuses you can give. It's not always the case, and sometimes it's actually useful to experience all that, the headaches and so on and so on. So there's no hard and fast rule. For the most, for a hardcore meditator, you can put up with it. Mahasi Sayadaw talks about a monk in one of the commentaries, I think, who meditated in the snow. He just did sitting meditation while it was snowing around him, which, of course, we hear about with Tibetans and so on, meditating in the snow. I've got that picture of me, quite a nice picture, sitting in my parents' patio furniture with the snow coming deep, and I was sitting with my legs crossed and wearing snowshoes. That sums it up. You can do it. I mean, to me, it was sort of an experiment on my own part to just experience that. Here I'm going to experience in monk's robes, which are not very much protection, but to just go through it, and it's quite freeing, really, to not have to avoid. So certainly there's that, but wearing a hat, there's nothing wrong with it. It can be quite useful. I think there's many reasons to wear it. I mean, but it's certainly not something you should obsess over. I have to wear a hat, etc. I don't think you have to obsess about not wearing a hat. Just you understand that you can at times go without it.
Did you stop recording?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Now you're afraid. I've made you afraid. A terrible monk. 42 viewers. Hello, everyone. 620. We can probably go all the way to 7. I'm okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Or maybe we should stop at 6:30. Whoa, we got a whole list here. We're getting more questions. At some point in the night, I just start going through the questions quickly. So please don't spam us, because I'll just start bullet answering them. Okay, here's an interesting one. Ready? Wait. Maybe we can take turns. Stefano, Stefano just asked one. So Robin asked this one, and Stefano.
Okay, where is the page? How do I access it?
Do you see on the right side of the Hangout? Do you see the questions? Or you guys don't see that, do you?
We do, yeah. If you go over to the left and mouse on the left side of the screen, a panel will appear. Just hit the Q&A, and then the questions will appear on the right side.
On the left side of the screen. Oh, Q&A. Yeah.
Yeah, mouse on the left, and then you'll get the Q&A button.
Okay. This one is what advice, right?
Yeah. So
Yes.
Okay.
Robin
will do it. Yeah.
Ready?
Yes. What advice would you give to someone that has a child that wants to ordain? One of my best friends has a young child and is in a conundrum because he has a child with a woman that he's not with, that he has to pay money to, yet he wants to be a monk.
Syntactic ambiguity. Semantic ambiguity? Is that what it is? Semantic ambiguity? The person who wants to become a monk is the child, right?
I believe the person that wants to become a monk is going to have to pay child support, if I'm reading it correctly.
Wait, it's very ambiguous. Advice you give to someone that has a child that wants to ordain. Has the child and wants to ordain, or has a child who wants to ordain? It's not clear in this question.
I think the friend has a child who is a father who is going to have to pay child support, but yet he still wants to ordain and become a monk.
The
But he's going to
parent
have to pay child support.
the parent wants to ordain. Yeah,
The
see, I read
the
it totally
father,
different.
yeah.
I read it that the child wanted to ordain.
Yeah, that's how I read it at first too.
Well, yes, but the child has a
Don't-
child of its own, as far as I can tell.
I don't think so. Someone that has a child but wants to ordain is how I think it is. Anyway, that part doesn't matter, because the point is someone has a child who someone who wants to ordain has a child, right? And has to
Most
pay.
likely.
This is a clear case of ambiguity.
So if you were going to be a monk, but you would have to pay child support, how could you do that?
Shoot, I thought it was going to be. I like the other version of the question better. Liking, disliking. Because this one's kind of boring. And I mean, I can't answer these questions. I can't help you. I'm sorry. What do you want me to say? You have a problem. There's lots of reasons why people can't ordain. There's burdens that we have. Because if you ordain, it's quite likely going to interfere with your practice. The fact that you're worried about these people. I mean, there are cases this is a standard question, and the standard answer is there are cases of people who are able to just do away with it. I mean, no, if you have an obligation to pay money to this one, what are you going to do? Run away from your obligation? Is that what you're asking? Is it okay for them to run away? It's not a conundrum. You can't ordain. It's quite simple. You have to pay this money. Are you saying, would it be good if this guy stopped paying money to this that he was morally, legally obliged to give and become a monk? I mean, I don't think that's what's being asked here, so there's no real question. It's more like a lamentation, right, Robin?
He just has to wait until the child is grown, and then he can ordain.
I don't like this question at all. Michael? So what advice, I'm sorry, I'm being quite cruel and uncompassionate. What advice would I give? I still don't, I don't know. I'm sorry. Because
Well,
I'm not just here to give advice to people. I mean, you want advice on meditation? Meditate. But I don't have advice for someone who wants to do something that they know they can't do. Help me out here, Stefano.
I'm reading the questions. I'm not paying attention.
Oh,
Well, I think what makes it confusing is we all know the story of the Buddha, and the Buddha left his child.
right.
And that's part of it. But then,
But we also
a
know that
person like this
child,
person has an obligation, and
the Buddha didn't have any obligations to his child. This was a well taken care of child. I guess there is something there, because there is a potential for one to say, they're all going to suffer in samsara anyway, why not just leave them behind? I don't think it works that way, because this has probably been court mandated. He has to pay money to, yet he still wants to become a monk. Well, if he has to pay money, he can't become a monk.
You have to be debt-free to become a monk, correct?
I don't know if you could call this a debt per se, but Robin is right. My mom's butting in here. This is great. I've got my mother in. It's funny. I was in the airport. I'm going to stop this because this question I'm not answering. I'm sorry, Michael. I was in the airport coming back from Thailand. I got to Toronto after a huge, arduous, long trip, and waiting for my baggage, and I had a box, and boxes actually go to a different place, and I didn't know that, so I was waiting for an hour for my luggage, and it never came, because boxes go to a different place. But somewhere in there, this woman comes up to me and she said, "Oh, you're Theravada Buddhist monk," and yes. And, do you know Sona, Ajahn Sona? And I said, I know of him. I know the name. Oh, so you've never been over there? And she said, and I said, no, different tradition, and da da da. And we talked, and she said, oh, I'm Sona's mother. And it was, it was quite something to meet another monk's mother. So he's quite well known, I think, in British Columbia anyway. In Canada, many people know Ajahn Sona. And so I thought to myself, wow, I wonder if my mom does that. And here she is. No, it was more. I was more thinking, wow, it's neat to neat that families sometimes get involved in such things. It's all wholesome, good stuff. Having my mother in this hangout is just awesome. But she's siding with Robin.
Of course, we're the moms.
Are you a mom?
Of course I'm a mom. I have 4 sons.
Oh, I didn't know.
Wow, 4.
Yes.
I had no idea. What do you mean, of course? I don't have any sons.
No. I have sons.
Not a very good argument, is it? I've been a monk for 13 years. What were you right about, though? What did you say that you're right about? Robin?
Pardon?
What were you right? What is she saying you're right about? What are you right about?
Oh, maybe the version of the question?
Oh.
The way I was reading the question, maybe?
No, you said something else after that about the Buddha leaving.
But the Buddha, yes. So it's hard to understand sometimes the context of that. But you're right, that child was going to be well taken care of. It sounds like this child would maybe not be taken care of without.
Yeah, but I think you can even go. I think you can even go further and say there's a potential argument for just leaving.
But wouldn't that be on your mind? I mean, if you walked out on a child that was going to be really in poor shape.
Yeah, but not necessarily. There's an argument. I'm not defending it totally, but you could potentially say, well, this is samsara, and no matter what, they're going to suffer. Wouldn't it be good if I became enlightened first? And potentially it's not on your mind. That's always the excuse we give, don't, because it happens. People go off in the forest and they feel horrible about leaving people behind and so on, for far less reasons, in far better circumstances, and still feel guilty and bad and miss the people they love and so on. But I don't think that's a categorical or a definite argument. I think you could still say that they could do it. But I still don't like this question, because I think he's saying has to pay. He has to pay the money. He still wants to be a monk. You'd have to word it to me, because the point being, that's none of my business. We don't deal with such things. You come to me and say, look, there's this person who's thinking of just abandoning his family, and the family depends on him for money. What would you say about him ordaining? I think if you worded it like that, I'd feel more comfortable.
Word it more objectively.
Yeah, I'd feel. But here you're saying he has to do one thing, wants to do another thing. What's your advice? There's no advice. You have to do it, so do it. I guess that's kind of the reaction, is that don't tell me you have to do something and then ask for advice. If you have to do it, then the advice is to be mindful. Stop complaining. It's not. This is a friend, right? Best friend.
There's another good question. Well, that one wasn't a good one, but
it wasn't a bad question.
Well, yeah.
It wasn't a very. I don't know. We get kind of picky on this, because we get so many different questions, and because it's such an open platform, people are asking all sorts of questions. So I have a fairly narrow set sort of algorithm for deciding on the questions. One of the things that sets off the alarms is when it has anything to do with worldly things. Like if you're asking me to comment on paying money and so on, it's not really something we can do. But
So,
insofar as we talked about it here, is it okay? We accept people, and we have these things where, first of all, it's going to potentially weigh on your mind, but we don't have any. We're not going to forbid you. It's not against the rules. Now, Stefano, you bring up a good point about debt. But interesting. I think even if the law, if you were legally mandated to pay money, I don't think from a Buddhist point of view you could call that debt. It's interesting because you would incur debt if you didn't pay.
yeah.
But suppose you're to pay on the end of the month and you ordain halfway through the month. You're not in debt when you ordain. So technically you're okay. I mean, it's a horrible situation. Don't do that. That's messy. That's just going to mess you up and probably land you in jail. Who knows? I mean, but I think technically speaking, there's a kind of a loophole there, but a bad loophole. So I think we come back to this point where, the question you're asking is not. We can't use this question because you have to pay money. What are you asking us? Can I just run away from the law and something?
So let's move on.
Well, let me just throw one thing in. Kids grow up really, really fast. So, if you can't do it now, you can do it in 18 or 21 years or whatever. It goes by quick.
Once the kid is grown. I guess another thing is these kind of questions is it's asking too much. Anytime you ask for advice about lay life, I start to get tired. Sorry. I'm just going to leave it there.
Yep.
I mean, it's too broad. If we were to mess with people's lives like that, it would be too much work. How could you do it? Anyway, let's try and do some bullet answering here.
See another good one. What is the most effective way to deal with excessive aversion? What precedes it is judgment and fear.
Well, we start at the top, you see, because people are voting on the question.
Oh, okay.
We've got one here that's a +2, and that's where we're starting. And I've got a bunch by my mum here that aren't questions.
Oh, Stefano, you may need to sort your questions. I think there's a couple of different, if you hit the little triangle next to the questions, there's a couple of different sorts.
I scrolled down.
Okay.
Okay, you want me to read the lucid dreaming one?
There's
a new one on top.
I was just gonna let me go through a few of them here because
Okay.
some of them don't require recording. Okay, so supporting the monastery food-wise. Okay, this is actually a good question. It's a good question. Interesting. Okay, let's go for this one. Stefano, you ready?
Let me just finish reading it. Could you please? Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
On your Facebook page, you mentioned putting a system in place for supporting the monastery food-wise. Could you please elaborate on how this system should be set up for Theravada monks and how people could be of service to monks in general?
I think I've commented on this. I had this question or a similar question. But it's interesting because obviously I've been thinking about this, and it occurs to me that this kind of system is not really ideal, right? The ideal would be to But the principle, forgetting about the ideal for a second, the principle is applying to those people who are interested or looking to do a good deed, looking to give already. That is actually, that's an important principle. It's not readily evident. Some people think it should more be, some people think that the way Buddhism works is they see a monk, people would see a monk going on alms round and think, oh, here's someone who needs food, let me support him or her because they need it. That's not actually why the alms round was created, or was instated in Buddhism. It was instated because there were people who had set up such offerings. You know, they would stand. It was a sort of a tradition, and even that notwithstanding, it's an important distinction because it otherwise slips into begging, right, or advertising. And so there's actually a curious rule, as I recall, you know, if my memory serves me, where monks are, yes, in the protocol is quite clear that the bowl, a monk's bowl, should be under their robe at all times, except when someone is offering food. The point being, you can't advertise that you're actually looking for food. And regardless of how it happens, this is an important principle to keep in mind at all times, or let's say specifically when going on alms round, is that you're not looking to encourage people to give. You are, even though it may encourage them to give, you know, obviously that happens, definitely, and most of the time that's what happens, is people see it and they say, oh, here's someone who needs food, let me give them some food, or at the very least, oh, here's a chance for me to support Buddhism, so then we're going to support it. But nonetheless, in the monk's mind, there has to be a sense of non-advertisement. So, to some extent, we're skirting this line, and so I thought of this morning. I thought, this isn't quite how I'd envisioned living. You know, to have this set up a system where we're no longer directly dealing, because people want to order food from restaurants for us. Of course, that doesn't work really, because people come to the monastery and offer food just on a whim. And so someone comes today and offers food, and then we get food from the restaurant. Suddenly we've got twice as much food as we can eat, and often it would get thrown out. Furthermore, someone orders for 4 people, there's only 3 people, etc., etc. So we switched. Now our idea is to order food from the grocery, from the grocery stores. So people want to order food from the grocery stores for us. But you know, this also is problematic, because what if we get lots of fresh produce and we can't keep it and we can't use it all? Then again, we're throwing out food. So potentially, you know, there's these issues. But ideally, we want to try and arrange it ourselves, and the only input other people have is money, which is awful. You know, this isn't how you want to run things. You don't want to just, you know, be a financial, you know, or a business where you run things and you require inputs of money. Where did the alms round go? It was so much nicer when people were ordering from the restaurant or from the grocery store. But so this thought came up that this isn't exactly the direction we want to go. But then the thought came up that I'm missing the point. The point is not food for me or the other monks here. The point is we have meditators. We're dealing with a different kind of a system. Oops, I'm recording this, huh? Sorry about that. The system we're dealing with is a meditation center, and we're dealing with lay people. So in fact, what we're talking about is lay people supporting lay people, meditators supporting other meditators, which is also very wholesome, but it works in a different way. These people are not monks, and they're certainly not able to go on alms round. So we have in that extent, we have a lay organization, Sirimangala International, that is running these courses, and that's lay people dealing with lay people. And as a monk, I really, I'm probably not acting entirely appropriately by getting involved with this, but in the modern day, this is how we do things. The monks are kind of overseeing
Especially in Canada.
centers. Yeah, even in Thailand, the monks are quite involved with lay meditation, lay people coming to the monasteries. In some places will not do it that way. They will not have anything to do with lay people. But our tradition has always, even in the time of Mahasi Sayadaw, lay people went to the monasteries and were sort of taken care of. The monks were certainly at least partially involved. So practically speaking, we kind of have that. This isn't quite answering your question, but just giving some background and sort of the philosophies involved here. So this is a question that I'm asking is, in regards to the monks, what is a proper system? And I think it's important to not lose sight of that that connection, where you find people who want to give, where you rely on people who want to give, and all you're doing with this technical organization is facilitating that. How do you connect the person to be supported with the person doing the supporting? The philosophy is I've talked about these three kinds of philosophies: the reciprocal system, the prociprocal system, and what was the third one? I don't have a name for it. Associative or applicative or something. Anyway, reciprocal we understand is if I give to you, you have to give me something back in return. This is a capitalist system. It doesn't work because I want something from you. I don't want to give you anything, right? So it's not logical. Suppose you have a bunch of people. If someone suddenly needs something, that need has nothing to do with giving something, right? So, I mean, there's arguments against this, but from a simplistic point of view, the problem isn't solved by requiring something in return, because people who can't pay it, if it sets you up for this problem where a person needs something and can't afford it, or certain people can afford more, so it sets you up for this problem. The prociprocal system is where if I give to you, you're under an obligation to give to someone else. This also doesn't make any sense, because then the only people giving are those who have been given to, and you're never going to solve the problem of needs. The only system that really makes sense is where when someone needs something, you give it to them. Right? But anytime anyone gives, it's a one-sided transaction. Wherever it's needed, you associate, or you allocate. Maybe allocative would be a good name. You allocate resources where they're needed. Now, of course, whether that works, it could work in a society or not. I don't know if that describes communism in any way, but I don't think exactly. So if you apply resources exactly as they're needed, then all needs are met, right? This is the ideal, probably the ideal, similar to the ideal of communism. But in a system such as Buddhism, that's the idea. When I teach, I'm giving. I cannot have the sense of requiring something in return. As well, everyone else in the system supports me because I need food. I need food, and I'm part of this system, so you give me that food. The system, another thing you could say is the system requires me to have food, maybe even more than it requires other people to have food, because I'm, in our organization, I play a large role as far as teaching. I mean, this isn't about me, but the idea of a monk, you support the monk because they play an important role. You support the teacher because they play an important role, and you allocate, or not more resources, but you concern yourself with that, especially because that's an important part of the system. I think that is, that's an important, that's where we start with this kind of system. The question is, how in modern day society, how do we apply these ideas of people ordering food online and so on? I think you could potentially set up, if we were only dealing with, suppose it was only me, right, and I was living alone in a house. I could potentially set up a system, and that's the thing is it's chaotic here, and there's the Cambodian community and so on, so we can't easily predict from day to day what's going to happen. There's the Cambodian people, there's a group of Laotian people, and then there's the scattered Sri Lankan and even Western people.
So I think donating groceries would be the best.
Even that can be problematic because our fridge space is limited, We can't just accept groceries any which way. It has to be still systematic. That's specifically because of the nature of it. We're dealing with two systems here, the meditators and the monks. If it was just me living in the house, probably easy to regulate. Make sure that this monk has food every day so he can do his online talks and continue, etc., etc. But I think really in this case, our system has to be a little more systematic, and I think we're really going to have to put our foot down, and sort of require the grocery shopping to be systematic, and
so that many people could be involved.
But not just accept random groceries from people, because we threw around the idea of just accepting groceries from California. Actually, someone said, "Oh, I'll contact the Thai people," because I have a whole bunch of Thai ex-students in California from when I was there, and they'll all send. Many of them are restaurant owners. They would all send groceries to Canada, no problem. I get boxes. In fact, we yet may get boxes of groceries from California. I don't know. Actually, sending across the border might be difficult. I'm not sure. But unless it's dried, non-perishable goods, it's not going to really work. So I think in this instance we're going to have to be systematic about it. Sorry, anyway, that's not quite, so the point is to how the system should be set up for Theravada monks. I mean, ideally the monks should go on alms round. We had to set up here, and we could yet do that again. I think the problem is here in Hamilton, it's not even a problem. We could do this. We just have to, I have to push the head monk, and we have to do this. We drive to their houses. We used to do this. We did this for a while. We got in the car with our bowls and everything, and someone drove us to people's houses. Every day we actually had a schedule set up. This day we go to this house, this day. Every day we would go to someone's house, and they would have food there. It's actually quite easy because there's Buddhists all over the city. Even here in Stony Creek, within the not such a wide range, we can find many people who are just would love to offer us food. It's quite inspiring to see how keen people are to do something. If you consider, for many people, that's their only connection with the religious life is to give charity and to have that aspiration of supporting Buddhism.
Would you bring the meditators with you?
No, I wouldn't.
See, that's the thing that, I'm wondering, because beyond the monks, you're establishing a meditation center, and they have to eat too.
Well, we wouldn't eat in these people's houses. We'd collect a pinto. What do you call these things? The stacked plates, jansarak, in Cambodian. It's a stacked plates. It's a very big thing in Asia.
Okay.
Stainless steel, full of food, and bring that back to the monastery and eat. We never would stay at their house, or rarely ever would eat at their houses. Another way is we've gone to restaurants. We have a standing invitation at a Vietnamese restaurant, a Cambodian but international restaurant, and at least one other restaurant. So we can always go there. We can always do that. But this requires coordination, vehicles, the driver. That's not entirely possible. But the point being that, in regards to your question, the ideal is to approach those people, to not be any inconvenience to them. The key is this verse where the Buddha said the wise ascetic is like a bee. The bee goes to the flower and takes something very valuable, but not to the flower. The flower doesn't miss the pollen, and that's crucial. It shouldn't be painful. It shouldn't be an imposition. The flower actually wants the bee. It wants the bee to take the pollen. It benefits, and that's key. It should benefit. So, barring the alms round, there are ways of setting up systems like they do in Sri Lanka, of people bringing food daily to the monastery. That also happens. It's not as inspiring as the alms round. Something we should keep in mind, but I don't think it's going to work here because I have to deal with meditators, and so it puts you. And being a meditation teacher always puts you in a special situation, and even in the Vinaya it's mentioned special circumstances for someone who is teaching. You have to treat them differently, and so as a teacher, I have to. I can't have the luxury always of living my life the way an ordinary monk, a monk who's not in that position can. I mean, I've had to deal with that many times. When I'm traveling, I live as a monk, but when you get in the position of a teacher, things change, and this is why you'll see the head of monasteries will often live his life quite different from the ordinary, the non-official monks who don't have official capacity.
Non-teachers.
It's not even teachers. It's having an official, being a monastic official. You tend to have certain duties, that kind of thing. So there's that complication that not all monks are in the same position, and you shouldn't criticize the head monk because he doesn't go on alms round. He can't. Often he can't. He has other things he has to do, and it's just not convenient and not suitable for him to do that. Okay. Anyway, enough time. Thank you for the question. All right, 7. Let's go through these quickly. Let's go through the rest of these quickly. I'm sorry that we're not going to be able to answer. If you don't like my short answer now, you're welcome to ask the same question later, and I'll try to give a more detailed answer. Okay, so this is the...
But regarding the food, a quick question. How about if we were to set up a food drive where people donate whatever groceries they buy we bring it to one location, and then it is brought to the monastery?
But we have the problem of too much, we have to regulate.
But is that a big problem? Is that a big issue?
Well, if it's fresh,
There's too much.
If it's fresh food, yeah. Are you talking about canned non-perishables?
No.
Well, if you have like tons of fresh food, what do you do with it? Even if you have tons of frozen food, we need space. Maybe we have to buy a big deep freeze. We could do that. This is what we could do. Get a deep freeze, one of those big tank freezers. And then, yeah, send us frozen food. We'll keep it all year. I think that stuff keeps forever. Not forever, but significant periods of time. The problem is I can't do any of this.
No, yeah.
And the big problem is that this is not me talking. This is Chanda, our layperson, or whoever. We need someone local here. This is the problem. Is this isn't the monastery we're talking about. This is the lay part of the organization. And so depending on them, although he's actually quite happy. He said, I asked him today. I said, what kind of food can you cook? He said, anything. I said, well, you have any idea? No, anything. So maybe we can challenge him. No, he's a good guy. So we're lucky. In this case, we're lucky to have a steward, and that's something I didn't mention, is that having a steward is a sort of accepted practice, but it's not beautiful. From a monastic point of view, it's not inspiring. You don't see stewards. I mean, in the Vinaya you do have it. There's a lot of these allowances, but it's not beautiful. It's not inspiring. Okay, anyway. Lucid dreaming. No. Hate people who are worthy of dana. From a Buddhist point to consider generosity. Yes, giving to anyone is generosity. But right action, you have to separate. Right action is not generosity. Right action is abstention from wrong action. That's all right action means. As long as you're not doing wrong action, that's right action. So, of course, when you're giving, that's right action, potentially. Yes, that's right action. But right action is just much broader. But generosity, if you give to an immoral person, that's still considered generosity. If you give to an animal, that's generosity. It's all good. And there's actually, the Buddha put it like this, I think: if you give to an animal, you'll get it back 100 times. If you give to an immoral person, you'll get it back 1,000 times. If you give to a moral person, you'll get it back 10,000. I mean, it extrapolates like that.
The same applies if you do something wrong. If you do something bad.
Potentially, yes. Namaste. Hello. Buddhist approaches to mindfulness which differ greatly from the most common non-Buddhist. Too detailed, sorry. Please, if you're still interested, you'll have to ask next week. I'm not going to talk about myself, sorry. Peace and love, humans. Thank you. What do you think about Studio City? I don't think about it that much, actually. I've been there. One of my friends has one of my Thai friends has a restaurant there. Would you agree to the sentiment that the routes in life are all worth taking? The good, the bad, it's all you in the making. No. How do you make a living out of being a monk, and how do you become a monk? Yeah, too much. Sorry. If you're interested, you can ask next week, but it's not really a question I'm that interested in answering. What should one do with spent offerings? Okay, Robin, I'm just going to skip the ones that you put up because there's not someone waiting for an answer here.
Okay.
Dukkha and Buddha. I've had trouble to explain dukkha to people who are new to Buddhism and currently investigating. What would be the approach from your perspective? Dukkha. Yeah, too difficult. It's a good question, but again, I'm going to have to ask for this week. What is the most effective way to deal with excessive aversion? No, I don't have much of an answer. You just have to meditate, really. I've talked about anger. You can look at my videos on anger, and loving kindness can be helpful. Again, Robin, I'm just going to skip this.
Sure.
Okay, we'll consider that a wrap. It was 2 hours.
I have a quick question, actually. Yeah, has to do with killing.
Can't wait till next week?
Okay, fine.
No, if it's a quick question, I'll answer. Is it one to do
What
with
about
killing?
incidental killing, such as mowing the lawn? Or if a spider's in your house and you decide to bring it out and you know it won't survive because it's not favorable conditions for insects to survive outside.
It's it's problematic, because you know that if you mow the lawn, chances are something's going to die.
Yeah, you know it, and then
Sure, it's not a good idea.
so you shouldn't.
Get a goat.
Better
Have the
not.
goat eat the grass.
Yeah, better not to mow your lawn.
Okay, thank
Better
you
not,
for a good
better not to
excuse to ignore
better,
it, Troy.
better not to drive a car in the summer, because you're liable to hit insects.
Oh,
I think you have to say that. I think it has to be said that you can't just say, "Oh no, you don't know," because technically speaking, it's fine. You don't know that you're killing beings, but it's not really true. I mean, the Buddha even mentioned this. Moggallana was going to stir up the earth at some point, and the Buddha told him not to. He says because beings will be disturbed by it. You know? Don't do things that you know are going to, because you're sure your lawn has living beings in it, little beings.
mm.
You know.
And if you see an insect in your house, you should leave it alone.
Right in the winter, right?
Yeah,
Well, yeah, putting it outside is a death sentence.
yeah.
Absolutely, that's wrong. It's like throwing a puppy in the water, or a kitten into the lake. There's no difference, It's like it's like dropping a lobster in a boiling pot of water. What's the difference? You know it's going to die. So I think it has to be said that you can't get away with these passive killings, which is problematic for lay people, really. I wouldn't say you could call it killing. It's not necessarily. It's not really breaking the 5 precepts. Mowing your lawn is not breaking the first precept. Doesn't mean it's wholesome. So now no one's going to mow their lawns. That's a problem, huh?
No.
Hmm.
Who needs to mow their lawn?
It's a problem because the city requires it in many cases.
Oh, they do?
Oh yeah, you can get fined if you don't mow your lawn. In America, it's a big deal anyway. I don't know over here.
Oh yeah, in some places, homeowners associations will get all over you if you don't mow your lawn and have it to a certain length.
I think it's even more than that. I think in California anyway, I think the city will charge you.
Yes. Yeah, if it's really bad, the city will charge you as well.
Mm-hmm. But there are ways around that. There's a lot of people planting gardens, and it depends on the city. Some cities are going to hit you for that, but there are ways of getting around it. A lawn is a useless thing anyway, right? It's a waste of water. Yeah. There's no reason to have a lawn. This is what people say. Environmentally speaking, it's a silly thing. Our lawns are contributing greatly to our environmental problems, especially the fertilizer, herbicides to get rid of the dandelions. It's ridiculous. For what? For something that's cosmetically beautiful.
Yeah.
When I grew up, back in my day, well, I grew up we had these grasses, tall grasses. Wonderful.
You are lucky to be surrounded by nature.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Growing up in the city would have been, couldn't imagine it. Whatever, it's not a big deal living in the city. But in fact, living in the city can help a lot. No, that's totally wrong because you think it's lucky. But living in the country contributes to a lot of animalistic practices like killing. I have many friends who grew up in the city and would never think to kill anything. They never had the opportunity, or never had the interest because they live in a city that's quite sterile and you don't have to deal with these pests. But killing mice was routine. killing bugs and insects, mosquitoes. We had so many. It felt like survival, you know. It was good. We thought good to kill, you know. So if I'd grown up in the city, I would have avoided a lot of bad things. Probably would have taken on some other bad things in their place. But no, it's encouraging to see people who live in the city and don't ever think to kill like that. It's one good thing about living in the city. Less impetus to kill. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you.
Bante.
Tomorrow at noon we have the Visuddhimagga. That's through Mumble.
Are you at a specific section?
Yes. Do we know which section we stopped at? Did we keep a place?
Yes, I'm keeping track of that. We're on section 26, starting with section 26 of chapter 1 of the Visuddhimagga. Tomorrow at 1700 UTC time.
So noon Eastern, right?
Yes.
It's going to change. Is that going to become 11 or 1?
Spring ahead, that will become 1?
Yeah.
1?
1 is good. 11's not
1
good.
is good. No.
Okay.
You're
great.
eating at 11.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you say bye in Pali?
How do you say bye in Pali? They don't have these.
Or peace, or...
There is actually a way that lay people use to leave the monks. Hantatani mayang bante kachama bahukichamaya bahukaraniya. And they'll say this at ceremonies. At the end of a ceremony, it's quite nice actually. In Jomtong, where I grew up as a monk, they have these weekly ceremonies, and it was so nice to get into this ritual. Every week they would come and they do their chanting and offer food, and there's a very ritualistic way of it's a formal, not ritual, it's a formal way of offering the food. The 4 lay people come, and 4 monks come, and they all grab this big plate of food that people have just offered piece by piece, and they hold it, and then there's a proclamation, a declaration, and a formal offering. Anyway, you go through this whole, it's quite a neat thing to be through. It's all very wholesome. And then at the very end, it ends, the leader says, Hantatani, and everyone repeats after him, Mayang Pante, Hantatani. Handa means hey, kind of, or now. No, not now. Handa means, it's like a hey, or okay. It's like okay. Idani means now, right? I'm mixed up here or now. Now? Idani. Idani means now. Handa idani, handa dani, mayang bante. We, mayang bante, venerable sir. Gachama, must go or are going. We're leaving now, bante. Okay, we're leaving now, bante. Bahukichamaya. For us, there is much work. Bahukaraniya. Many things to be done. You'll see that in the suttas actually. That's the rote way of leaving the Buddha. When people left the Buddha, they'd say that. Handatani mayang bante gachama bahukaraniya. Bahukichamaya bahukaraniya. And then the Buddha would say, yes, I forgot.
Hantatani? Hantatani? Is that how you pronounce it?
Hantatani mayang bante.
Hantatani mayang bante.
Yasatani tumhe kalang manyatha. I think that's it. Yasatani. tumhe kalang manyatha. It's not quite it, I don't think. But it means do what you think appropriate at this point. Do what you think there's time to do. That's what the Buddha would reply. And that's how we do it now. Yasathani tumhe kalang manyatha. Is that it? Yasathani? It doesn't sound right. Yeah, that's right. Yasadani tumhe kalang manyatha. I got it. Yasa
Yasa.
Yasa.
and yasa tumhe.
Yasa tume.
Yasa dume.
Yasa, that's what I say. You guys don't say that.
Oh.
Yasadani tumhe kalang manyatha. Kalang manyatha. What you think it time for. Yasa of which. Now is the time. Now is the time for which. Yasa kalang. Now is the time for which you think it proper. So you say, Handadani mayang bante.
Hantadani mayang bante.
Mayang bante.
Kachama.
Kachama.
Jama.
Bahu kichamaya.
Bahu kichamaya.
Kichamaya.
Bahu karaniya.
Bahukaraniya.
Bahu kariniya.
And then I say, Yasadani tumhe kalang manyatha. And then you say, Sadhu bante.
Sadhu bante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
That's standard. I just looked it up. Anyway, don't look it up. But if you read the suttas, if you read like in the Majjhima Nikaya, in the Gahapatiwagga, for example, I'm sure that's where you'll find it. But you'll find it all over. At the very end of many suttas, you wouldn't even notice it. But I didn't notice it for a long time. I think most Thai people don't realize it's actually in the Tipitaka. Most people don't realize. They say it and they think it's just a tradition. But it actually is in the suttas. It's where they got it from. So they just use it. It's kind of neat. Most people don't even know what they're saying. It's just what they do at the end.
Oh. How long did it take you to learn Pali?
I'm still learning Pali.
Oh.
I took a year course in Sanskrit. That helped. The Sanskrit is so technical that and exacting because it's kind of an artificial language. Classical Sanskrit apparently was sort of constructed. You know, Panini's grammar, it was kind of artificially created to sort of standardize the dialects. So as a result, it's quite rigid and detailed. So doing that made Pali easy. As a result, learning Pali was... If you do that first, learning Pali becomes not so much of a chore. And then from then on, I've taken... probably my best intro to Pali was when I started learning the Thai way. And someone recently asked me again if I would write a book on how to learn Pali, and I've kind of got one framework for one set up. It's just when am I ever going to get the energy and the time to put it together. It's not high on my list of priorities because it's not exactly essential for meditation. Now, if Robin were here, if she didn't have 4 sons, I didn't realize. And she could come here and she could help me. We could put it together.
Well, you have that great thing where the book that you're writing, people can add to it from a distance.
Could do that with the Pali text, no? Just dump it into Google Docs.
Just let them add it.
And let people add it. Yeah. I could even invite people to edit it. We could edit it together. That'd be awesome. If it was a group thing, I could find the energy to do it. That'd be so much easier. Because the meditation book still takes mostly me, but this would be... I'll see about that. Let's see about doing that. I'll see if I can convince some Pali expert to help me with it. To join in. And comments, people could just, even just commenting and say, what does this mean? Awesome. Awesome idea. And reminds me of the book that I'm still writing, which I started on chapter 3, and it's not going to be that difficult. The reason I stopped is because I wasn't sure what to do with chapter 3. I wasn't sure if I was going to keep it or if I was going to combine chapters or something. And so it just, that's why it got put to the side. I tried again, and when I was away, I did take another look and start writing it again, but I just got carried away with other things. So now that I'm back, I'll take it. It won't be difficult. I think I'm back on track, and all it's going to take is, it's not the top of my list yet. I have to start on the trip to Florida first, because people need time if they want to organize something. So I need to get that started. Once that's started, I don't think there's much more in the way.
Then you'll be there for 3 months for the rains, right? The Vasa?
Here. I'll be here for 3 months.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm hoping not to be in Asia for so long this year. I don't think... probably what I can do is, if I am invited to Sri Lanka, I'll stay a shorter time. There's no need to stay a month there, I don't think. And maybe just a month up on the mountain in Thailand, and that's it. Well, so a month and a half. And then the India trip. So 2 months, let's say. And then come back. I want to spend more time here, get settled in, really set this up. Anyway, good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hope to see you all tomorrow for Visuddhimagga.
See you then.
Okay.
Bye-bye.